A pleasing land of drowsy head it was, of dreams that wave before the half-shut eye, and of gay castles in the clouds that pass, forever flushing round the summer sky.
Van Wart. 1755. Here is Elizabeth Guyon's grave. Anne Martin, age 9. Elizabeth Guyon, the daughter of
Reverend Gulick and Elizabeth Jane Diana.
Died 1765.
In vain your tears, ye faithful mourners, rise. Your friend is safely lodged within the sky. My prayers are past my bones at rest.
Died 1755. In memory.
Reader, behold as you pass by. As you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you must be. Prepare for death and follow me.
Enclosed within this silent grave, a patient sufferer here is laid.
Here lies the graven Lyndon Van Hendert. In memory of Jane Hannah. Sacred to the memory of Katharina Westervelt, wife of Jacob Hooverhope.
Abraham Martin, died 1761, age 67.
Years are past my bones at rest. God took my life when he thought best. Anne Marker, age 19.
Died 1755, age 73.
Reverend Thomas Smith.
1768. In memory of George de Revere. In memory of Jacob Burkhardt, who died March 31st.
The tomb, a doleful voice, my ears attend the cry. You living men, come view the ground, where you must shortly lie.
In the bosom of one of those spacious coves which indents the eastern shore of the Hudson, at that broad expansion of the river denominated by the ancient Dutch navigators the Tappan Zee, there lies a small market town, or rural port, which by some is called Greensburg, but by which is more generally and properly known as Tarrytown. This name was given, we are told, in former days by the good housewives of the adjacent country from the inveterate propensity of their husbands to linger about the village tavern on market days. Be that as it may, I do not vouch for the fact, but merely advert to it for the sake of being precise and authentic. Not far from this village, perhaps about 2 miles, there is a little valley, or rather lap of land among high hills, which is one of the quietest places in the whole world. A small brook glides through it, with just murmur enough to lull one to repose. and the occasional whistle of a quail or tapping of a woodpecker is almost the only sound that ever breaks in upon the uniform tranquility. I recollect that when a stripling, my first exploit in squirrel shooting was in a grove of tall walnut trees that shades one side of the valley. I had wandered into it at noontime, when all nature is peculiarly quiet, and was startled by the roar of my own gun as it broke the Sabbath stillness around, and was prolonged and reverberated by the angry echo. If ever I should wish for a retreat whither I might steal from the world and its distractions and dream quietly away the remnant of a troubled life, I know of none more promising than this little valley. From the listless repose of the place and the peculiar character of its inhabitants, who are descendants from the original Dutch settlers, this sequestered glen has long been known by the name of Sleepy Hollow. And its rustic lads are called the Sleepy Hollow Boys throughout all the neighboring country. A drowsy, dreamy influence seems to hang over the land and to pervade the very atmosphere. Some say that the place was bewitched by a high German doctor during the early days of the settlement. Others, that an old Indian chief, the prophet or wizard of his tribe, held his powwows there before the country was discovered by Master Hendrik Hudson. Certain it is, the place still continues under the sway of some witching power that holds a spell over the minds of the good people, causing them to walk in a continual reverie. They are given to all kinds of marvelous beliefs, are subject to trances and visions, and frequently see strange sights and hear music and voices in the air. The whole neighborhood abounds with local tales, haunted spots, and twilight superstitions. Stars shoot and meteors glare oftener across the valley than in any other part of the country, and the nightmare, with her whole ninefold, seems to make it the favorite scene of our gambles. The dominant spirit, however, that haunts this enchanted region and seems to be commander-in-chief of all the powers of the air is the apparition of a figure on horseback without a head. It is said by some to be the ghost of a Hessian trooper whose head had been carried away by a cannonball in some nameless battle during the Revolutionary War, and who is ever and anon seen by the country folk hurrying along in the gloom of night as if on the wings of the wind. His haunts are not confined to the valley, but extend at times to the adjacent roads, and especially to the vicinity of a church at no great distance. Indeed, certain of the most authentic historians of those parts, who have been careful in collecting and collating the floating facts concerning this specter, allege that the body of the trooper, having been buried in the churchyard, the ghost rides forth to the scene of battle in nightly quest of his head, and that the rushing speed by which he sometimes passes along the hollow like a midnight blast is owing to his being belated and in a hurry to get back to the churchyard before daybreak. Such is the general purport of this legendary superstition, which has furnished materials for many a wild story in that region of shadows. And the specter is known at all the country firesides by the name of the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow. It is remarkable that the visionary propensity I have mentioned is not confined to the native inhabitants of the valley, but is unconsciously imbibed by everyone who resides there for a time. However wide awake they may have been before they entered that sleepy region, they are sure in a little time to inhale the witching influence of the air and begin to grow imaginative, to dream dreams and see apparitions. I mention this peaceful spot with all possible laud, for it is in such little retired Dutch valleys found here and there embosomed in the great state of New York that population, manners, and custom remain fixed, while the great torrent of migration and improvement which is making such incessant changes in other parts of this restless country sweeps by them, unobserved. They are like those little nooks of still water which border a rapid stream, where we may see the straw and bubble riding quietly at anchor, or slowly revolving in their mimic harbor, undisturbed by the rush of the passing current. Though many years have elapsed since I trod the drowsy shades of Sleepy Hollow, yet I question whether I should not still find the same trees and the same families vegetating in its sheltered bosom. In this by-place of nature there abode, in a remote period of American history, that is to say some 30 years since, a worthy wight of the name of Ichabod Crane. Ichabod sojourned, or as he expressed it, tarried in Sleepy Hollow for the purpose of instructing the children of the vicinity. He was tall, but exceedingly lank, with narrow shoulders, long arms and legs, hands that dangled a mile out of his sleeves, feet that might have served for shovels, and his whole frame most loosely hung together. His head was small and flat at the top, with huge ears, large green glassy eyes, and a long snipe nose, so that it looked like a weathercock perched upon his spindle neck to tell which way the wind blew. To see him striding along the profile of a hill on a windy day with his clothes bagging and fluttering about him, one might have mistaken him for the genius of famine descending upon the earth, or some scarecrow eloped from a cornfield.
It is a wonderful schoolhouse, Mr. Crane.
A very low building. May I?
Of course.
One room. Rudely constructed of logs. Cold in the winter, I would imagine.
There's a fire.
Windows partially glazed. Partly patched with the leaves of old copybooks. I do enjoy the sunlight.
But it is most ingeniously secured. The building is. A withe is tied in the handle of the door and stakes it against the window shutters, so that though a thief might get in with perfect ease, he would find some embarrassment in getting out.
Oh?
An idea borrowed from the architect, Joost van Houten, from the mystery of an eel pot.
The mystery would be why anyone would want to break in, Friedrich.
We are happy to have you in Sleepy Hollow, Mr. Crane. We have not had a schoolmaster for some time.
Help has arrived, Friedrich Martlings. I am not impressed with the room.
Oh?
However, I am with the situation of the building, even though it stands in a rather lonely but pleasant spot. A nice brook nearby, and here, Outside this window, a formidable birch tree grows. Very nice and helpful.
Helpful.
Spare the rod and spoil the child, Friedrich. Spare the rod and spoil the child.
A, B, C, D, E.
Silence. Abraham,
Oh,
you appear to be in some far-off distant place.
I...
Would you care to join the rest of us upon the flowery path of knowledge?
But I was.
No, you were not. If I had to guess, I would say you were daydreaming.
I wasn't.
The rest of us were reciting the alphabet. Your lips were not moving.
That's because I was saying them in my head. I was picturing the letters as I was reading them.
Abraham Westervelt, you were a puny stripling, and I dare say it pains me to see you wince at the least flourish of the rod. I do not find joy in the smart of my subjects. On the contrary, I administer justice with great discrimination rather than severity, taking the burden off the backs of the weak and laying it on the backs of the strong, Edward Youngs. I was saying how I pass by with indulgence those who are weak, and the claims of justice are satisfied by inflicting a double portion on some little tough, wrong-headed, broad-skirted Dutch urchin who will sulk and grow dogged and sullen beneath the birch.
I didn't do anything.
You snickered, and that is worse than not saying the alphabet. Now step forward, Isaac Youngs, so that I may do my duty by your parents.
But I...
Forward!
Mr. Crane?
Ah, James, I thought you had left for the day.
No, sir, I was just outside with some of the others.
Discussing your lessons for the day, I will assume? Reveling in all you have learned?
No, sir. Actually, we were talking about the sky. We were thinking it might rain later tonight.
Nonsense. There isn't a hint of rain.
You can see it in the leaves of the trees. They're blowing backwards. Maybe we should have the day off tomorrow if it does?
Oh, I would like that, but I am afraid the town would not. Besides, it will not rain.
I think it will.
There. That is the last window, and now the school is safe and secure from anyone who might want to break in. Not that anyone would. You tarry.
I was waiting for you.
Waiting?
Have you forgotten? You were going to help my father with the fence by our barn.
Oh, yes, I did indeed forget. Oh, my hectic, weighty world.
Winter is coming, so I have firewood to cut all afternoon. Otherwise, I would help him with the fence. And since my older brother got married and now lives across the Hudson...
No reason to make excuses, James. I was not thinking you were failing in your contribution to the household. I was just thinking about the fence and my back. But I promised I would help, did I not?
After church last Sunday, yes, sir.
Why?
And my sister has made you an apple pie.
Oh, your sister. Yes, your sister. Come, James, don't tarry about. There are fences to be mended, wood to be chopped, pies to be eaten, and sisters to be thanked. Come, come.
I think it's admirable the way you help out around the town, Mr. Crane.
Thank you, James. Although I must admit, the revenue which arises from the school is small and scarcely sufficient to furnish me with daily bread.
He was a huge feeder, and, though lank, had the dilating powers of an anaconda.
And to help out with my maintenance, I am pleased the local custom in these parts allow me to be boarded and lodged at the houses of the farmers whose children I instruct.
You stay at each house for a week?
Yes. I hope soon to be able to stay at yours. I have been going through the rounds of the neighborhood, all my worldly effects tied up in this cotton handkerchief at the end of a stick.
All you own is in that little bundle?
All I own.
I've heard from my mother that some people in the town think the costs of schooling is a grievous burden.
Yes, I have heard that in a breeze around town.
Some have also said schoolmasters are mere drones.
I have heard that also. But I have developed various ways of rendering myself both useful and agreeable. For example, I assist the farmers in light labors, as I am today, helping to make hay, take the horses to water, drive the cows from pasture, cutting firewood.
Mending fences?
Yes, mending fences. I am able to lay aside all the dominant dignity and absolute sway with which I lord in my little empire, the school, and become wonderfully gentle and ingratiating.
Well, that's a good thing.
Oh, yes. I have found favor in the eyes of mothers by petting the children, particularly the youngest. And like the lion bold, which whilom so magnanimously the lamb did hold, I will sit with a child on one knee and rock a cradle with my foot for whole hours together.
Look, there's Mrs. Brush.
Indeed it is. Good afternoon to you, Mrs. Brush.
Oh, good afternoon, Mr. Crane. A lovely day.
Yes, but I do feel we will have some evening rain on the way.
What?
As I was telling my young pupil here, the leaves are blowing all over.
Backwards.
Backwards, and that means rain. I can feel it.
Oh, Mr. Crane. Now don't forget, you are joining myself and my daughter for cakes and sweetmeats at our tea table Saturday.
Oh, how could I forget?
I am so looking forward to it.
Not as much as I assure you.
And Elizabeth and I cannot wait for our singing lessons after church on Sunday.
Yes, it will be a wonderful afternoon.
I can hardly wait.
Good day, Mrs. Brush.
Good day.
The parade of the silver teapot.
You're giving singing lessons, Mr. Crane.
I have been appointed the singing master of the neighborhood, yes. Now I am able to pick up many bright shillings by instructing the young folks and their mothers in psalmody.
I didn't know you were a singer as well.
Oh, yes. People that on earth do dwell, sing to the Lord with cheerful voice. Him serve with fear, his praise forth tell. Come ye before him and rejoice.
Brom, where have you been?
Took Daredevil out for a gallop. A fine day for one. What is that?
The church singing a hymn. I didn't go today. I was feeling a little...
Too much grog, Solomon? What is that noise? It resounds far above the rest of the congregation. We're half a mile away on the other side of the mill pond, and it cuts through the air.
You could hear on the other side of the Hudson. I believe those peculiar quavers are from the nose of Ichabod Crane.
The schoolmaster?
That is the real reason I did not go to church. His singing, it rings in my ears for days.
His mercy is forever sure. His truth at all times firmly stood, and shall from age to age endure.
That concludes our service for this glorious Sunday morning. I want to thank you all for coming, and I have been asked to remind you that the ladies who are to take singing instructions from Mr. Crane are to wait here. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Over here, ladies. We shall begin shortly. Thank you, Reverend Smith.
You're very welcome, Mr. Crane. Might I ask, were you having vocal problems this morning? And last week as well, and the week before that?
Vocal problems? How do you mean?
Your tones are, shall we say...
I have never been in finer voice.
Here I am, Mr. Crane, and here are your shillings.
You may pay me later, Mrs. Brush. Not in church. It wouldn't be proper.
Oh, of course.
I shall leave you to your work, Mr. Crane.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you. Now, ladies, I want to thank you all for signing up for lessons.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Crane. My husband says I can't carry a tune and I'm throwing money away.
The same with me. I have no ear for music.
We shall remedy that. You're all here for a reason, to improve your melodic tones and send your voices soaring into the morning air on the wings of the doves. Now, we shall begin with the song the good Reverend finished with, Old Hundredth. Are we ready?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
Good. Now, and...
All people that on earth do dwell, sing to the Lord with cheerful voice. We are his folk, he doth us keep.
A moment! Ladies, the fundamental element of singing is to sing in the key of the note given to you. I shall demonstrate. All people that on earth do dwell, sing to the Lord with cheerful voice.
Oh, look at this one. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down. Yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the mist thereof. That is so romantic. This is such a beautiful churchyard.
Look at this one. In vain your tears, ye faithful mourners, rise. Your friends are safely lodged within the skies.
Oh, it comforts one.
Reciting epitaphs on tombstones is an educational activity. One can earn a great deal from a tombstone. Look at this one. Ye grateful friends that hover round this stone, and children who in sable garbs appear, though we're removed from you to realms unknown, you must not shed the unavailing tear. And this, my cares are past, my bones at rest. God took my life when he thought best. And this one here, reader, behold as you pass by, as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you must be. Prepare for death and follow me.
Mr. Crane? Mr. Crane?
Oh, yes, ladies. Perhaps we should go down to the banks of the mill pond. A change of scenery would do us good.
Oh, yes, I think that would do us good. Yes, I really do.
The devils now broke in upon the country after as astonishing a manner as was ever heard of. The people that were infected and infested with such demons in a few days' time arrived under such a refined alteration upon their eyes that they could see their tormentors. They saw a devil of a little stature and of a tawny color, attended still with specters that appeared in more humane circumstances. These tormentors tendered unto the afflicted a book, requiring them to sign it at least, in token of their consenting to be listed in the services of the devil, which they refusing to do, the specters under the command of that blackness, as they called him, would apply themselves to torture them with prodigious molestations. Blackness.
Mr. Crane?
James, I didn't hear you walk up.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you.
It's quite all right.
What were you reading?
Cotton Mather, a rather direful tale. I was so lost in the book that I didn't realize the sun was setting, even though the printed page was becoming a mere mist before my eyes.
Mother has the guest room all ready for you, but we should leave now before it gets too dark.
It was such a wonderful afternoon, sitting on this rich bed of clover against a tall tree, the brook nearby.
Reading about devils and demons.
And witchcraft, something I most firmly and potently believe in.
We should go.
Right, you are.
Yes?
Sounded ghostly.
It was a whippoorwill. Sure is dark. Sky's overcast. You can barely see the moon through the clouds. Just a tree toad.
Of course it is. I knew that.
Just some birds in the thicket. And that's a screech owl.
Sounds like the wail of the banshee.
Maybe you shouldn't read Cotton Mather so close to dusk.
You must admit that the woodland changes after sunset. See, in the darkest places, small glittering eyes.
Fireflies.
Oh, oh, let go of me, go away, baby, go away. I was struck by a witch's token. Help, witches, help.
Mr. Crane, what's the matter? It was only a beetle.
What?
It was only a beetle. He flew into you. That's all.
A beetle?
You looked like you were about to give up the ghost.
Oh, well, it may have looked like a beetle. Singing a psalm will drive away evil spirits. Is truth at all times firmly stood, and shall from age to age endure.
Or drive through them. The good people of Sleepy Hollow, as they sat by their doors of an evening, were often filled with awe at hearing his nasal melody floating from the distant hill or along the dusky road. Another of his sources of fearful pleasure was to pass long winter evenings with the old Dutch wives as they sat spinning by the fire, with a row of apples roasting and spluttering along the hearth, and listen to their marvelous tales of ghosts and goblins and haunted fields and haunted brooks and haunted bridges and haunted houses.
And the headless horseman. It was the headless horseman.
The headless horseman?
Yeah, I have heard him galloping on his ghost horse many a winter's eve.
As have I. Once I saw him at a distance, galloping through the snow-covered field across from my house, his horse gliding as if on air, and the Hessian brandishing his sword, swiping at the air. And the next morning, in the field, no tracks could be found.
No tracks? How is that possible, Goody Yannick?
All I can tell you is what I saw. Mind you, it was at a great distance away.
I have never seen him, but I have heard him, riding past my very door, then down into the valley, and sometimes even through the town.
Searching for his head.
What happened to his head?
Carried away by a cannonball.
Why does he ride here?
It is rumored that his headless body was buried in the cemetery next to the church.
He rides forth to the scene of battle in nightly quests of his head.
Nightly?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Crane? Mr. Crane?
Oh, I'm sorry, Goody Eckers. My mind, I was somewhere else.
A faraway look has indeed come over you. What were you thinking of?
I was thinking of our evening here, tonight, and that there's a pleasure about this. Snugly sitting in the chimney corner, the chamber all of a ruddy glow from the crackling wood fire, and where no spectre dares to show his face. then it is dearly purchased by the terrors and danger of my subsequent walk homeward, with a headless horseman roaming the countryside.
Oh, enough about the headless horseman. Mr. Crane, tell us again about the comets and the shooting stars.
Is it true what you were saying earlier about the world?
What?
What you were telling us a while ago. Is it true that the world turns round and that we are half the time topsy-turvy?
Walk homeward. What fearful shapes and shadows beset his path amidst the dim and ghastly glare of a snowy night. With what wistful look did he eye every trembling ray of light streaming across the waste fields from some distant window? How often was he appalled by some shrub covered with snow, which, like a sheeted spectre, beset his very path? How often did he shrink with curdling awe at the sound of his own steps on the frosty crust beneath his feet, and dread to look over his shoulder, lest he should behold some uncouth being tramping close behind him? And how often was he thrown into complete dismay by some rushing blast, howling among the trees, in the idea that it was the galloping Hessian on one of his nightly scourings? All these, however, were mere terrors of the night, phantoms of the mind that walk in darkness. Yet, daylight put an end to all these evils, and he would have passed a pleasant life of it, in despite of the devil and all his works, if his path had not been crossed by a being that causes more perplexity to mortal man than ghosts, goblins, and the whole race of witches put together. And that was
a woman.
What?
Didn't you just ask me why I had a certain look about me?
Yes?
I have met the most wonderful woman in all of Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, I thought you were feeling ill.
Oh, no.
Who is she?
One of my musical disciples. A blooming lass of fresh 18, plump as a partridge, ripe and melting and rosy-cheeked as one of her father's peaches.
Who?
Katrina.
Katrina von Tassel?
Ah, Katrina. A coquette.
Katrina von Tassel, famed not merely for her beauty, but her vast expectations.
So tempting a morsel. She has found favor in my eyes. Even more so after visiting her in her paternal mansion.
You visited her at her home?
Oh, yes. Her father, Baltus Van Tassel, is the perfect picture of a thriving, contented, liberal-hearted farmer.
I know. He seldom sends either his eyes or his thoughts beyond the boundaries of his own farm.
True, but within those boundaries, everything is snug, happy, and well-conditioned. His stronghold is situated on the banks of the Hudson, in one of those green, sheltered, fertile nooks in which Dutch farmers are so fond of nestling. A great elm tree spreads its broad branches over it, at the foot of which bubbles up a spring of the softest, sweetest water, and a little well formed of a barrel, and then steals sparkling away through the grass to a neighboring brook that babbles among the alders of dwarf willows. Hard by the farmhouse was a vast barn that might have served for a church, every window and crevice of which seemed bursting forth with the treasures of the farm. The flail was busily resounding within it from morning to night. Swallows and martins skimmed, twittering about the eaves, and rows of pigeons, some with one eye turned up as if watching the weather, some with their heads under their wings or buried in their bosoms, and others swelling and cooing and bowing about their dames, were enjoying the sunshine on the roof. Sleek, unwieldy porkers were grunting in the repose and abundance of their pens, from whence sallied forth now and then troops of sucking pigs, as if to sniff the air. A stately squadron of snowy geese were riding in an adjoining pond, convoying whole fleets of ducks.
Regiments of turkeys were gobbling through the farmyard, and guinea fowls fretting about it like ill-tempered housewives with their peevish, discontented cry. Ichabod's mouth watered as he looked upon this sumptuous promise of luxurious winter fare. In his devouring mind's eye, he pictured to himself every roasting pig running about with a pudding in his belly and an apple in his mouth. The pigeons were snugly put to bed in a comfortable pie and tucked in with a coverlet of crust. The geese were swimming in their own gravy, and the ducks pairing cozily in dishes, like snug married couples with a decent competency of onion sauce. In the porkers, he saw carved out the future sleek side of bacon and juicy, relishing ham. Not a turkey but he beheld daintily trussed up, with its gizzard under its wing, and, peradventure, a necklace of savory sausages. And even bright Chanticleer himself lay sprawling on his back in a side dish, with uplifted claws, as if craving that quarter which his chivalrous spirit disdained to ask while living. As the enraptured Ichabod fancied all this, and as he rolled his great green eyes over the fat meadowlands, the rich fields of wheat and Indian corn, and the orchards burdened with ruddy fruit which surrounded the warm tenement of Van Tassel, his heart yearned after the damsel who was to inherit these domains, and his imagination expanded with the idea how they might be readily turned into
cash. And the money invested in immense tracts of wild land and shingle palaces in the wilderness. I can see Katrina with a whole family of children mounted on the top of a wagon loaded with household trumpery, with pots and kettles dangling beneath, and me bestriding a pacing mare setting out for Kentucky, Tennessee, or Lord knows where.
Ichabod!
Ah, Baltus, how very nice to see you, sir.
I was beginning to think you were not coming.
I would not miss the opportunity to have tea with you and your lovely daughter, Katrina. I am sorry if I am behind my time. I was just admiring your farm. What wealth! You must be very proud indeed.
No, not proud. Satisfied, but not proud. Proud can be a very bad thing. Come in. Come in!
Oh, this room dazzles the eye.
We call it home.
Rows of resplendent pewter, claw-footed chairs, dark mahogany tables shining like mirrors. Beautiful.
Ah, here she is, Katrina.
Katrina, how do you do?
Mr. Crane, how nice of you to join us for tea.
You have no idea how I've been looking forward to it.
Mr. Crane?
Oh, sorry, James. I was just remembering. Oh, what a lovely tea it was. I will be seeing her again for tea and who knows, perhaps for a picnic.
But...
Yes, I must win my way into the heart of this country coquette, beset with a labyrinth of whims and caprices.
Don't forget about the impediments.
What impediments?
Mr. Crane, if you have your heart set on Katrina von Tassel, you may find you have a host of fearful adversaries.
Adversaries?
Katrina has a lot of, well, admirers in the town, but one in particular.
Rustic admirers, uncouth gallants. They cannot compete with my worldly knowledge, my high intellect, my charm. Katrina, if you had seen the way she looked at me as she poured my tea.
If you could see how her rustic admirers keep a watchful and angry eye upon each other, and how they're ready to fly out in the common cause against any new competitor, but there's one you need to...
Competitors?
That would be you.
I am not a competitor. There is no competition here. Why, I have been invited back for tea once again. Katrina.
Lord,
Here they come.
It's Brom and his gang.
And the Sleepy Hollow Boys.
Cornelia,
Brom, good afternoon.
we've been riding hard for this tavern. Need some hot buttered rum to take the chill off.
Well, I have it. I certainly do. Come on in, boys. It's a cold day, to be sure. Could tell that by your cap.
My cap?
You only wear that fur cap with the foxtail dangling behind when it's cold and snow is in the air.
Snow is still a few weeks out, but no one can deny it's cold. Ah, nice fire going.
Yep, 5 buttered rums.
Aye, yes.
Coming right up. Haven't seen you around lately, Brom.
Been away. Heard there was some trouble with ruffians over across the Hudson. We rode over to see what the fuss was about.
Oh, and did you find out?
Yep. Took care of them, good and proper.
What did you do?
Showed them they weren't as tough as they thought they were.
So what are we doing tonight, Brom?
I say we ride over to Sing Sing and wake them up tonight.
Yes, I think so.
No. I have other plans for tonight.
What other plans?
Tonight you'll see Daredevil tied to Van Tassel's paling.
You're sparking Katrina tonight.
Aye. It's been a week since I've seen her. Last Sunday.
Here is your rum, gentlemen.
What's the matter with you, Cornelius?
Nothing.
Cornelius, I've known you for many a year. You only stutter when you're nervous.
I do?
Yes. Now, you have no reason to be nervous with me. Ain't busted up the place in 7 years.
No, Brom, and thank you.
So, what is it?
We were talking about fighting the ruffians.
Was that it, Cornelius? Us fighting the ruffians made you nervous?
No.
Maybe riding over to Sing Sing looking for a scrap.
Was that it, Corny? Us starting a scrap in Sing Sing make you nervous?
No. The only thing you talked about was going sparking at the Van Tassels tonight.
Was that what made you stutter, Corny? Me sparking Katrina Van Tassel?
No.
What?
Don't throw anything.
Cornelius, why does that make you nervous?
Well, Brom, someone else has been sparking Katrina.
What?
It isn't me.
Who is it, Cornelius? Tell me everything you know.
Well, the word is, it's the schoolmaster.
The schoolmaster? Crane? What makes you think so?
How lovely you look this afternoon. Why, you're as lovely as the peaches basking in the sunlight. As lovely as...
Ah, Mr. Crane.
Mr. Van Tassel.
You're here for Katrina's singing lesson, no?
Yes.
Come in. Katrina, Mr. Crane has arrived for your lesson. I'll leave you to your work. So very nice to see you again, Mr. Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Van Tassel. Thank you indeed.
Ichabod!
Katrina, and how is my songbird today?
Oh, Ichabod, you always know just what to say.
Shall we?
I've been practicing for the past 2 days on the new song, but I was having a little bit of trouble with it. I dare say I don't know where I'm going wrong. I know you will be able to help me.
Oh, of course, Katrina. First, perhaps, we could have some libation for the larynx.
I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Oh, I won't.
Now, who can that be? Ichabod?
Yes, Katrina?
I can see Father over by the barn. Would you answer the door, please?
Of course, my dear.
you Ichabod?
That is, after all, my name.
Oh, you silly goose. Who is it?
She calls you a silly goose?
Who?
A rather broad-shouldered, double-jointed, tall man with short, curly black hair.
Brom? Brom? Oh, why, I thought you were across the Hudson.
I came back.
And how very nice to see you, but, sir, we are in the middle of our singing lesson.
Katrina, would you excuse us a moment?
Certainly.
What is this all about? Take your hands off me.
Listen to me, schoolmaster, for I shall warn you only once. Katrina is mine.
Ha!
Do you want open warfare?
Open warfare?
I'll double you up and lay you out on a shelf in your own schoolhouse.
I would not like to give you the opportunity. I shall continue giving Miss Katrina her singing lessons. I profess not to know how women's hearts are wooed and won. To me, they're always been matters of riddle and admiration. Some seem to have but one vulnerable point, or door of access, while others have 1,000 avenues and may be captured in 1,000 different ways. It is a great triumph of skill to gain the former, but still greater proof of generalship to maintain possession of the latter. For man must battle for his fortress at every door and window. He who wins 1,000 common hearts is therefore entitled to some renown, but he who keeps undisputed sway over the heart of a coquette is indeed a hero. Certain it is, this is not the case with you, Brom Bones. Now, I shall return to my singing lesson.
I hear Brom's horse is no longer seen tied to the palings of the Van Tassels Sunday evenings.
Aye, and a deadly feud has arisen between him and the schoolmaster.
I think it is horrible how Mr. Crane seems to have become the object of whimsical persecution by Brom Bones and his gang of rough riders.
Have you heard? Brom and his gang smoked out Mr. Crane's singing school by stopping up the chimney. How are...
Have you heard? Someone broke into the schoolhouse at night in spite of its formidable fastenings of wife and window stakes and turned everything topsy-turvy.
Topsy-turvy? Topsy-turvy, and the schoolmaster is beginning to think all the witches in the country hold their meetings there.
In this way, matters went on for some time, without producing any material effect on the relative situations of the contending powers. On a fine autumnal afternoon, Ichabod, in a pensive mood, sat enthroned on the lofty stool from whence he usually watched all the concerns of his little literary realm. In his hand he swayed a ferule, that scepter of despotic power. The birch of justice reposed on 3 nails behind the throne, a constant terror to all evildoers, while on the desk before him might be seen sundry contraband articles and prohibited weapons detected upon the persons of idle urchins, such as half-munched apples, pop guns, whirligigs, fly cages, and whole legions of rampant little paper gamecocks.
Yes? Enter.
Mr. Crane, sir.
Yes. What can I do for you?
I have a message, sir, from Mine Herr Van Tassel.
A message? Thank you. You may go.
Good afternoon, sir.
Due to some last-minute circumstances, I'm dismissing the class early. You may all go home, and I shall see you in the morning.
Mr. Crane? Is something wrong?
Wrong? No. Why would you ask that?
You just let us go 2 hours early.
Yes, for I must get ready. I've been invited to a harvest frolic at the Van Tassels tonight. A harvest frolic, music, jack-o'-lanterns. Katrina.
Brom Bones.
Katrina. I shall secure a horse for the evening. I shall arrive like a gallant knight of old.
The gallant Ichabod now spent at least an extra half hour at his toilet, brushing and furbishing up his best and indeed only suit of rusty black, and arranging his locks by a bit of broken looking-glass that hung up in the schoolhouse, that he might make his appearance before his mistress in the true style of a cavalier. He borrowed a horse from the farmer with whom he was domiciliated, a choleric old Dutchman of the name of Hans van Ripper.
Something wrong?
I was rather hoping to arrive at the Van Tassels like a knight-errant in quest of adventures. But this is nothing but a broken-down plow horse, gaunt and shagged, and ewe-neck, a head like a hammer. His rusty mane and tail are tangled and knotted with burrs. One eye has lost its pupil. It just glares.
Ah, but the other eye has the gleam of a genuine devil. He had fire and metal in his day.
His day must have been a long time ago.
True. He has outlived almost everything but its viciousness.
What's the horse's name, Hans?
Gunpowder. Don't let his appearance fool you, Ichabod. For old and broken down as he looks, there is more of the lurking devil in him than in any young filly in the country.
Steady there. Onward, Gunpowder.
Ichabod was a suitable figure for such a steed. He rode with short stirrups, which brought his knees nearly up to the pommel of his saddle. His sharp elbows stuck out like grasshoppers. He carried his whip perpendicularly in his hand like a scepter. And as his horse jogged on, the motion of his arms was not unlike the flapping of a pair of wings. A small wool hat rested on the top of his nose, for so his scanty strip of forehead might be called. And the skirts of his black coat fluttered out almost to the horse's tail. Such was the appearance of Ichabod and his steed as they shambled out of the gate of Hans van Ripper, and it was altogether such an apparition as is seldom to be met with in broad daylight. It was, as I have said, a fine autumnal day. The sky was clear and serene, and nature wore that rich and golden livery which we always associate with the idea of abundance. The forests had put on their sober brown and yellow, while some trees of the tenderer kind had been nipped by the frosts into brilliant dyes of orange, purple, and scarlet. Streaming files of wild ducks began to make their appearance high in the air. The bark of the squirrel might be heard from the groves of beech and hickory nuts, and the pensive whistle of the quail at intervals from the neighboring stubble field. The small birds were taking their farewell banquet. In the fullness of their revelry, they fluttered, chirping and frolicking from bush to bush and tree to tree, capricious from the very profusion and variety around them. As Ichabod jogged slowly on his way, his eye ever open to every symptom of culinary abundance, ranged with delights over the treasures of jolly autumn. On all sides he beheld vast stores of apples, some hanging in oppressive opulence on the trees, some gathered into baskets and barrels for the market, others heaped up in rich piles for the cider press. Farther on, he beheld great fields of Indian corn, with its golden ears peeping from their leafy coverts, and holding out the promise of cakes and hasty pudding, and the yellow pumpkins lying beneath them, giving ample prospects of the most luxurious of pies. And anon he passed the fragrant buckwheat fields, breathing the odor of the beehive. And as he beheld them, soft anticipation stole over his mind of dainty slapjacks, well buttered, and garnished with honey and treacle by the delicate little dimpled hand of Katrina Van Tassel. Thus feeding his mind with many sweet thoughts, he journeyed along the sides of a range of hills which look out upon some of the goodliest scenes of the mighty Hudson. The sun gradually wheeled his broad disk down in the west. The wide bosom of the Tappan Zee lay motionless and glassy, excepting that here and there a gentle undulation waved and prolonged the blue shadow of the distant mountain. A sloop was loitering in the distance, dropping slowly down with the tide, her sail hanging uselessly against the mast. And as the reflection of the sky gleamed along the still water, it seemed as if the vessel was suspended in the air. It was toward evening that Ichabod arrived at the castle of Herr Van Tassel, which he found thronged with the pride and flower of the adjacent country. Old farmers, a spare, leathern-faced race in homespun coats and breeches, blue stockings, huge shoes, and magnificent pewter buckles. Their brisk, withered little dames in close-crimped caps, long-waisted short gowns, homespun petticoats with scissors and pin cushions, and gay calico pockets hanging on the outside. Buxom lasses, almost as antiquated as their mothers, excepting where a straw hat, a fine ribbon, or perhaps a white frock gave symptoms of city innovation. The sons, in short, square-skirted coats with rows of stupendous brass buttons, and their hair generally queued in the fashion of the time.
Ichabod, come in, come in.
Good evening, Mr. Van Tassel. How very nice to see you again.
You are not used to seeing the house so full of people. Fall to and help yourself. Plenty to eat, plenty to drink. Fall to and help yourself.
I will indeed.
Ah, Edward, you must let me show you what the ride has
Mr. Crane, how nice to see you.
Goody Yannick. It is lovely to see you as well.
You have no food.
I have only just arrived.
Come over to the table. So much to choose from, but you simply must try my Oli cakes.
Yes, I would love one.
Here you are.
Wonderful. Wonderful. How do you make it?
Simply boil the dough, then shape them into decorative knots, and then roll them in sugar.
Dough boiled, and then shaped into knots, rolled in sugar, and they are wonderful.
Would you like another?
Perhaps in a bit. But first I must sample some of the bounty on this table. Crisps, crumbling crullers, sweet cakes, shortcakes, ginger cakes, honey cakes, and look! Apple pies. What is this I'm looking?
A peach pie.
Oh my. Pumpkin pies, slices of ham, smoked beef, the preserved plums, cheese pears, quinces. Oh, I shall do this to you justice.
Why, if it isn't the schoolmaster. Hello, schoolmaster.
Good evening, Brombones.
I didn't know you were invited here tonight.
I'm invited here many nights, but of course you knew that.
I'm warning you, schoolmaster.
Your threats are growing tiresome.
Ichabod!
Katrina.
Father father told me you had arrived.
Indeed I have.
He sought the food out before seeking you out.
Hello, Brom.
Katrina.
Ichabod, the musicians are about to play a contra.
Oh, might I have the honor and pleasure?
Oh, why, of course. Would you excuse us, Brom?
My arm.
Brom,
What?
your face is turning red.
I know.
Ichabod prided himself upon his dancing as much as upon his vocal powers. Not a limb, not a fiber about him was idle, and to have seen his loosely hung frame in full motion and clattering about the room, you would have thought St. Vitus himself, that blessed patron of the dance, was figuring before you in person. The lady of his heart was his partner in the dance, and smiling graciously in reply to all his amorous oglings. While Brom Bones, sorely smitten with love and jealousy, sat brooding by himself in one corner.
That's 3 dances he's had with Katrina, Brom.
I know.
Why don't you dance with her? He's walking all over you.
I can't dance, and no one walks all over me.
Look, there. He's going over to talk to Baltus and some of the men. Now's your chance. Katrina's walking towards the ladies by the table.
No.
No?
Heard about the Battle of White Plains. He was an excellent master of defense. Parried a musket ball with a small sword, insomuch that he felt a whiz round the blade and glance off the hilt, in proof of which he was ready at any time to show the sword, with the hilt a little bent.
I have heard that story.
Do you think it is true, Baltus?
I have seen the sword. It is true.
The Battle of White Plains. There were Hessian soldiers at the Battle of White Plains, were there not?
Aye.
Going to tell ghost stories, Baltus?
What, Brom?
It's almost the witching hour. What better time to tell of our local superstitions?
Some things are not superstitions, Brom Bones.
But some are, and they thrive here. In other villages, they are trampled underfoot by the shifting throng. In those places, there is no encouragement for ghosts. They scarcely have time to finish their first nap and turn themselves in their graves before their surviving friends have traveled away from the neighborhood, so that when they turn out at night to walk their rounds, they have no acquaintances left to call upon. But not in Sleepy Hollow.
There is one ghost that does not need kinfolk to visit.
Aye, there is one.
And who would that be?
Well, you know, schoolmaster.
Ah, but there are many stories from these parts. A contagion in the very air that blows from our haunted region.
It breathes forth an atmosphere of dreams and fancies, infecting all the land.
Major Andre.
The British spy?
Aye, captured not far from us.
The woman in white.
Woman in white?
Jonas.
Aye?
Jonas, our talented fiddler. He wrote a song about them.
Oh, yeah, Reverend Smith isn't here. Let's sing it.
Well, what if we conjure up the spirits?
The spirits will rise whether we sing about them or not. The jack-o'-lanterns are glowing. The moon is at its fullest. Our harvest dance approaches the witching hour. What better time for your wonderful song? Please, you and your boys, play it.
Oh, and we will help.
Play it.
Where are you going, schoolmaster?
Just outside. I'd rather not listen to ghost tales.
Oh, no, stay.
Ichabod, are you leaving?
He said he was just stepping out.
Oh, no, please stay.
Deep in the dark of Sleepy Hollow, dare you follow me? Down to the graves of sleeping spirits, wandering aimlessly. Come and find the woman in white who haunts the glen most every night. Could that Major Andre be by the haunted Andre tree? Though you may find it hard to swallow Sleepy Hollow fare, I'll serve up a tale sure to fascinate. Too bad his plate is bare.
What? Brower has seen the most frightful of them all.
That's true, Bartis. Now I will tell you truly of the plight that is my own. As a most heretical disbeliever of ghosts, I am well known. But late one night while riding home across the village square, I fast approached a horseman who was also riding there. From whence he came so suddenly, I pondered as he flew, and fast bid my horse to run to catch a better view. Upon the bridge at last I met the man of whom we speak. He turned into a skeleton and tossed me into the creek. Then thunder. All that I remember was the thunder. Now I ask you, is it any wonder this man from hell who rides so well could catch the breeze and over the trees and vanish with a snap and a clap of thunder?
Are you certain it was the Headless Horseman?
Yes, you doubt me?
No, I just don't recall hearing any thunder when I met him.
You met the Headless Horseman, Ron?
No one has seen him as close as I.
I didn't want to bring it up for fear of scaring the ladies. You well may have descended from the finest troubadours, but I've a tale so chilling, thrice as marvelous as yours. Now I'm aware that gambling is the devil's tool, of course, but how could I resist to race the devil and his horse? The galloping Hessian caught up to me and passed me on the right. I challenged him for a bowl of punch to race him through the night. But just as we approached the bridge and I was in the lead, he bolted forth and vanished in a flaming burst of speed. Then fire. All that I remember was the fire. Worse than that, the blackguard is a liar. I win the dare both fair and square. He should concede the faster steed, but no, he makes the dash in a flash of fire.
Or should we believe it was the thunder?
Thunder, do not misconceive, it was the fire.
No matter what you both may say, the Headless Horseman rides today with thunder and fire to take you away.
It was a thunderous fire.
Or you could concede to fiery thunder.
A most peculiar game you play, and though you carry on this way, the horseman is coming to take you away. With fire and thunder.
The revel now gradually broke up. The old farmers gathered together their families in their wagons and were heard for some time rattling along the hollow roads and over the distant hills. Some of the damsels mounted on pillions behind their favorite swains, and their light-hearted laughter, mingling with the clatter of hoofs, echoed along the silent woodlands, sounding fainter and fainter until they gradually died away. And the late scene of noise and frolic was all silent and deserted. behind, according to the custom of country lovers, to have a tete-a-tete with the heiress, fully convinced he was now on the high road to success.
Katrina.
What passed at this interview I will not pretend to say, for in fact, I do not know.
Ichabod.
Something, however, I fear me, must have gone wrong, for he certainly sallied forth after no very great interval, with an air quite desolate and chapfallen.
Women. Women! What do you think, Gunpowder? Could she have been playing any of her coquettish tricks? Was her encouragement of me all a mere sham to secure a conquest of my rival? I saw some of the glances she made towards Brom and...
It was the very witching time of night that Ichabod, heavy-hearted and crestfallen, pursued his travels homewards. Along the sides of lofty hills which rise above Tarrytown, and which he had traversed so cheerily in the afternoon. The hour was as dismal as himself. Far below him, the Tappan Zee spread its dusky and indistinct waste of waters, with here and there the tall mast of a sloop riding quietly at anchor under the land. In the dead hush of midnight, you could even hear the barking of a watchdog from the opposite shore of the Hudson. But it was so vague and faint as to only give an idea of his distance from this faithful companion of man. Now and then, too, a long-drawn crowing of a cock, accidentally awakened, would sound far, far off, from some farmhouse away among the hills. But it was like a dreaming sound in his ear. All the stories of ghosts and goblins that he had heard that evening now came crowing upon his recollection.
Major Andre, you can hear cries and wailings about the great tree where he was taken.
She perished in the snow. On winter nights before a storm, you can hear her shriek. The woman in white.
The headless horseman. He has been seen several times of late patrolling the country. Tethers his horse nightly among the graves in the churchyard.
Gunpowder, we're approaching the very place where many of the scenes of these ghost stories took place. Maybe we should go a little faster. Or maybe not. You like the slow pace, don't you? What's that? Something in the center of the road. Oh, it's that enormous tulip tree. Towers like a giant above the others. That tree. Its limbs are gnarled and fantastic. Large enough to form trunks for ordinary trees, twisting down almost to the earth and rising again into the air. That's Andre's tree. Major Andre's tree. This is where he was captured. They hanged him and... What's that? Do you hear that? They say you can hear him crying out. Wait. What's... something white hanging in the midst of the tree? Oh. Just a place where the tree has been scathed by lightning. Bare white wood. But the rubbing of one huge bough upon another, swaying in the breeze. We passed it in safety.
About 200 yards from the tree, a small brook crossed the road and ran into a marshy and thickly wooded glen known by the name of Wiley's Swamp. A few rough logs laid side by side served for a bridge over this stream. On that side of the road where the brook entered the wood, a group of oaks and chestnuts matted thick with wild grapevines threw a cavernous gloom over it. To pass this bridge was the severest trial. It was at this identical spot that the unfortunate Andre was captured. And under the covert of those chestnuts and vines were the sturdy yeomen concealed who surprised him. This has ever since been considered a haunted stream, and fearful are the feelings of the schoolboy who has to pass it alone after dark. As he approached the stream, his heart began to thump. He summoned up, however, all his resolution, gave his horse half a score of kicks in the ribs, and attempted to dash briskly across the bridge. But instead of starting forward, the perverse old animal made a lateral movement and ran broadside against the fence. Ichabod, whose fears increased with the delay, jerked the reins on the side and kicked lustily with the contrary foot. It was all in vain. His steed started, it's true, but it was only to plunge to the opposite side of the road into a thicket of brambles and alder bushes. Gunpowder, come on! Over the bridge, come on! What's that? Thought I heard.
In the dark shadows of the grove, by the brook. It's huge, misshapen, towering. What is that? What should we do? Turn and run? To turn and fly now is too late. And besides, what chance is there of escaping a ghost? Or a goblin that can ride on the wings of the wind? If that is indeed what it is. Maybe it's someone from Van Tassel's. Maybe they're just letting their horse get a drink. Who are you? Who are you? Gunpowder. Is truth at all times firmly stood? He just bounded into the middle of the road. It's so dark I can't see. No, I can see a little better now that he's in the road. A horseman. Rather large dimension. His horse has a powerful frame. He left the road. Well, whoever it is, he isn't making any offer of sociability. And he appears to be letting us pass. Come on, Gunpowder. There you go. Let's just keep moving. Ooh, he's riding off the road alongside of us. Who's this? Gunpowder, Pastor Boy. He's trotting as well. All right, Gunpowder. We'll slowly walk. Let him pass us. Oh, no. Is truth at all times firmly stood? Here, the ground rises. After the break of these trees, we'll be able to see this rider against the sky. Now, and the moon is coming out from those clouds. Gigantic. Muffled in a cloak. And... headless! He's headless! He has his head on the pommel of his saddle! The headless horseman, Gunpowder! Yeah!
His terror rose to desperation. He rained a shower of kicks and blows upon Gunpowder, hoping by a sudden movement to give his companion the slip. But the specter
others started full jump with him. Away then they dashed through thick and thin, stones flying and sparks flashing at every bound. Faster, gunpowder, faster! Ichabod's flimsy garments fluttered in the air as he stretched his long, lank body away over his horse's head in the eagerness of his flight. They had now reached the road which turns off to Sleepy Hollow, but Gunpowder, who seemed possessed with a demon, instead of keeping up it, made an opposite turn. Gunpowder, no! And plunged headlong downhill to the left. This road leads to a sandy hollow shaded by trees for about a quarter of a mile, where it crosses the bridge famous in the goblin story, and just beyond the swell, the green knoll on which stands the whitewashed church. The bridge! Make for the bridge! As yet, the panic of the steed had given his unskillful rider an apparent advantage in the chase, but just as he got halfway through the hollow, the girths of the saddle gave way, and he felt it slipping from under him. What? No! No! My saddle! He seized it by the pommel and endeavored to hold it firm. But in vain, and had just time to save himself by clasping old Gunpowder around the neck. When the saddle fell to the earth, and he heard it trampled underfoot by his pursuer. For a moment, the terror of Hans Van Ripper's wrath passed across his mind, for it was his Sunday saddle.
There's no time for petty cares.
The goblin was hard on his haunches, and, unskillful rider that he was, he had much ado to maintain his seat, sometimes slipping on one side, sometimes on another, and sometimes jolted on the high bridge of his horse's backbone. With a violence that he feared would cleave him asunder. What's that? An opening in the trees now cheered him with the hope that the church bridge was at hand. The wavering reflection of a silver star at the bosom of the brook told him that he was not mistaken. Faster, Gunpowder! Faster! Faster! He saw the walls of the church dimly glaring under the trees beyond. He recollected the place where Brom Bones' ghostly competitor had disappeared. If I cannot reach that bridge, I am safe! Just then he heard the black steed panting and blowing close behind him. He even fancied that he felt his hot breath. Gunpowder! Faster! Another convulsive kick in the ribs, and old Gunpowder sprang upon the bridge. He bounded over the resounding planks. He gained the opposite side. And now Ichabod has to look behind to see if his pursuer should vanish according to rule in a flash of fire and brimstone. Just then he saw the goblin rising in his stirrups and in the very act of hurling his head at him. Ichabod endeavored to dodge the horrible missile, but too late it encountered his cranium with a tremendous crash. He was tumbled headlong into the dust, and Gunpowder, the black steed, and the goblin rider passed by like a whirlwind.
Gunpowder? Gunpowder! Why, where's Ichabod?
Hans Van Ripper.
Why, hello, James.
Hans, did Mr. Crane borrow a horse from you yesterday afternoon?
Aye, that he did. This one, Gunpowder. I just found him here at the gate. I've been waiting for Ichabod to return him. Didn't come back last night or this morning till now.
Mr. Crane never showed up at the schoolhouse this morning.
No.
We waited for an hour, then everyone went home. Ichabod didn't return the horse?
No, and look! The saddle is gone, the bridle under his feet. I'm getting worried. I'm afraid something has happened.
Let's retrace the road back towards the Von Tassels and see if we can find him.
Yes, we should do that.
He may have run into a low branch while riding. He may be hurt.
Nothing so far. This is the road that leads to the church. Maybe he went a different way. My best Sunday saddle. Gone. Oh dear, oh dear.
Hans! Over here! Come quick!
What? What is it, James?
Look.
My saddle. Trampled in the dirt.
And the tracks of horses' hooves.
Deeply indented in the road. They were at a fierce gallop by the looks of him.
They go right to the bridge. And look! Something is on the other side of the bridge. Come on! On the bank. Here, it's Mr. Crane's hat and, why, a shattered pumpkin.
Shattered pumpkin?
Where is he?
This is where the brook runs deep and black. I think we need to get help and have it searched.
You think he drowned?
I don't know.
Quiet, everyone. Reverend Smith has something to say.
This brook has been searched, both where his hat was found and also downstream. The body of the schoolmaster has not been found.
James.
Yes, Mr. Von Rupert.
You are his friend. I have been named executor of his estate, which doesn't have much. 2 shirts and a half, 2 neck stocks, a pair or 2 of worsted stockings, an old pair of corduroy small clothes, a rusty razor, and a psalm book, and these books. I don't know if you'd want them or not.
Cotton Mather's History of Witchcraft and a book of dreams and fortune-telling. No, I don't want them, Mr. Von Ripper. We should consign these to the flames.
He was carried off by the headless Hessian.
It is true, an old farmer who had been down to New York on a visit several years later, and from whom this account of the ghostly adventure was received, brought home the intelligence that Ichabod Crane was still alive, and that he had left the neighborhood partly through fear of the goblin and Hans Van Ripper, and partly in mortification at having been suddenly dismissed by the heiress. That he had changed his quarters to a distant part of the country, had kept school and studied law at the same time, had been admitted to the bar, turned politician, electioneered, written for the newspapers, and finally had been made a justice of the 10-pound court. Brom Bones, too, who shortly after his rival's disappearance conducted the blooming Katrina in triumph to the altar, was observed to look exceedingly knowing whenever the story of Ichabod was related, and always burst into a hearty laugh at the mention of the pumpkin, which led some to suspect that he knew more about the matter than he chose to tell. The old country wives, however, who are the best judges of these matters, maintain to this day that Ichabod was spirited away by supernatural means. And it is a favorite story often told about the neighborhood round the winter evening fire. The bridge became more than ever an object of superstitious awe. And that may be the reason why the road has been altered of late years, so as to approach the church by the border of the mill pond. The schoolhouse being deserted soon fell to decay, and was reported to be haunted by the ghost of the unfortunate pedagogue, and the plowboy, loitering homeward of a still summer evening, has often fancied his voice at a distance, chanting a melancholy psalm tune among the tranquil solitudes of Sleepy Hollow.
The curtain falls on Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Tonight's play was narrated by Jerry Robbins and starred Lincoln Clark as Ichabod Crane. Co-starring were Dennis Cordell as James Westervelt and Edward, Joseph Zamparelli Jr. as Brom Bones, Diane Capon as Katrina Van Hussel, Mrs. Wart and Goody Eggers, Jim Murphy as Friedrich Markling and Reverend Smith, Bill Hammond as Hans von Ripper, Cynthia Pape as Goody Yannick and Mrs. Brush, Shane Clark as Cornelius and Solomon, and yours truly as Baltus Van Tassel and Isaac. Also heard were Samantha O'Connell, Lee Berry, Jeffrey Gage, and Derek Allery. Tonight's play was dramatized, produced, and directed by Jerry Robbins. Executive producer was Mark Vandenberg, with music and lyrics by Jeffrey Gage. For the Colonial Radio Theater on the Air, this is Tom Barry saying good night from Boston.
Ha 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 ha!